Hari Om. Whenever we celebrate our Utsava, Parva, Tyohara, we often forget because staying in US, I have this every festival it happens that I have this predicament wherein people call me up or send me messages saying, "Hey, the calendar, the Hindu almanac that we have, it clearly says that it is one day before or one day after. Why are you in Chinmaya Mission celebrating it on this particular day?" Sometimes they even cite our own Chinmaya Mission website, CCMT's list of holidays, that when you follow May 8th, August 3rd, and such days specifically on that day, and that same directives that are given on that website say that it is one day before or one day after, why are you celebrating it on a different day? And then there are, I mean, this is an inquiry I can understand. Then there are those of them who have uh, confusions because the Hindu almanac, the moment you take it, there is different kala. There is Yamaganda, Rahukala, then there is Yoga, Karana, Vara, Tithi, Nakshatra. There's so much of data that is put in, it doesn't look simple anymore. And then Suryodaya, Suryasta, Chandrodaya, Chandrasta. There are several such details that are given in that one little cube of the calendar date. And it says one thing, but then why is this confusion? So I thought today, in understanding our festivals, when are these festivals celebrated? In order to understand when the festivals have to be celebrated, we have to look into what is this about the calendar system. Does it make sense? Even in this day and age, should we look into it or should we just make it simple? Declare that, this week, like how we have the American holidays, Thanksgiving weekend or whatever weekend, they have these 3 days set, and it goes year after year. There is no confusion. 3 day packages, 3 day 2 night packages for vacations, and done. Why can't we keep it simple? When there is a very detailed sophistication given, we make our standard of ignorance as the primary priority and ignore the sophistication. And then when something simple is given, we would want to know the symbolism of it, the science behind it, the scientific nature of it. ये उल्टे चलते हैं हम सब. So let us put all that to rest. Hopefully, I will try presenting it in as simple vocabulary as possible. Now, for understanding this, we'll have to compare it with the Western Georgian calendar and understand both in parallel, and then we will dwell into understanding the Indian calendar system. Thereby, we will get to understand when these festivals and how these festivals are celebrated. We'll come to that. So it's a little elaborate process, but I think it is a necessity. We have to connect to those roots. If we were doing our Sandhya Vandana regularly, then probably this confusion wouldn't have occurred. Because in the Sankalpa, you have to say, Mamopata samasta durita kshayadvara Shri Parameshwara Prityartham. Then you give the Tithi, Vara, Nakshatra, uh, Ayana, Rutu. All these details are given. Not only that, Shveta Varaha Kalpe, Vaivasvatamanvantare, Kali Yuge, Prathame Pade. Now, when you look at these details, it is so specific and precise. Scientific, मतलब scientific से भी ऊपर, because the precision is mind boggling. Let us get into it. Let us understand it. So now the Hindu calendar and the Western calendar, uh, here in the Western calendar, it is based on the sun's movement. 1 year is the time taken by the earth to move one time around in its own orbit around the sun. It precisely takes about, today we are very clear about it, that it takes about 365 days, 5 hours, 48 minutes, 46 seconds. One solar year in the Georgian calendar is very arbitrarily designated with 12 months, and some months have 30 days, some months have 31 days, and February in some years has 28 days, and uh, every fourth year, which is supposed to be the leap year, there are 29 days. Fun is, if you are born on a leap year, that too on a 29th, then on your 40th birthday, you will probably be celebrating your 10th birthday. Fun fact. Whereas when you come to the Panchanga or the Hindu almanac, it is very ingeniously based, taking into consideration both the sun and the moon's movement, that the earth rotates around its own axis while going around the sun, the moon goes around the earth, both of them together go around the sun. So there are, and I'm trying to keep it very simple here, there are axis movements, then there are the movement itself is in an elliptical orbit, and it perfectly fits into Kepler's laws of planetary motion. There are two laws, it just perfectly fits in. So I'm just trying to keep it as simple in language so that any layperson can understand this. So the Panchanga uses a solar year, which is 365 days, 5 hours, 46 minutes, which is very close to what today we calculate. But it divides it into 12 lunar months, meaning the month is decided based on the moon's movement, and we will get into the details of it in further down during our understanding of this almanac. So the lunar month, the time required for the moon to go around in its own orbit around the earth, it takes 15 days of waning, 15 days of waxing, so it takes about 30 days. These months again are not random or arbitrarily placed, they are in line with the sun and its movement. There are 12 planetary constellations, and when the earth, or when we are looking at the sun, behind the sun, the orbit that, or the planetary constellations in front of which the sun is seemingly appearing to move, though it is not the sun that is moving, it is we who are moving, therefore the reference point changes. That reference point, there are 12. So in the year, we move through these 12 rashis, constellations. If this is understood, now please pay attention to the diagram here. In that particular diagram that we'll be seeing on the left hand side, supposing here we are on the earth in the month of uh, May, it is facing the sun, and the right behind the sun there is Taurus and Aries, Mesha and Rishabha. So between the Mesha and Rishabha Rashi, the sun is seen by those who are living on earth. And down, you see that when the earth is facing the sun in the month of November, then we are actually looking at the sun between the Scorpio and Libra. Scorpio and Libra is the Tula Rashi and Vrishchika Rashi. So 12 such constellations, when the earth is moving, the reference point that is given, that the sun appears to be moving, this path is called the elliptical path. And as I said, the Kepler's laws, it just fits in perfectly here. The diagram always speaks worth more than 1,000 words. So here it is. Now, before we go in to understand the Hindu calendar, let me quickly go into the Georgian calendar as to when, how, and how it is appearing today. So, in order to understand that, this Western calendar system is predominantly a Roman calendar. Calendia, it used to be called the first month of Roman calendar. So, therefore, calendar became its today's utility. In the year before Common Era, BCE, the 46th year BCE, Julius Caesar announced a complete rehauling of the calendar system, so that the dating system, because he had a very good Greek astronomer, Sosigenes, he advised Caesar to have this new calendar system. He calculated that the length of the solar year is about 365 and a quarter days. So up until then, whatever was being calculated, the compensation of errors that have been accumulated over the year. So Julius Caesar decided to have the first year for 445 days, and from there on, they will include having this new system. But what happened in the year of 730 Common Era? Saint Bede, he was an Anglo-Saxon monk. He brought in a change, but that was also miscalculated. And he announced that the Julian calendar, which was introduced by Julius Caesar, was about 11 minutes 14 seconds too long. So the change was made. A cumulative effect of the error in the Julian calendar had to be shifted almost by 14 days. And by the 16th century, there was almost a few days of difference in the calendar system. So it has gone through a lot of ups and downs. It has gone through a lot of confusion in its origin. But the present day Georgian calendar commences from, they call it as the year of grace, signifying the year in which Jesus the Christ was born, and marks the beginning of the Christian era. This year is followed by AD, which translates to in the year of our Lord. Now, the confusion again there is the Bible clearly gives a reference to Jesus being born during the reign of during the rule of King Herod, who died in 4 BC. So all of Christendom has come to accept universally that Jesus was born approximately between 8 and 4 BC. This is with regards to the um, Georgian calendar. Now, coming to the Panchanga itself, let's go into the details of it. It's a very interesting study. Now, going into the Panchanga itself, the Vaidika Parampara, or that which is from the Vedic literature, shows very clearly that the knowledge of chronology, science of time, chronometry, science of measurement of time, both of them have been very, very precise. Knowledge of planetary motions, constellations, eclipses, solstices, seasons, all the calculations have been existing since the very beginning of the Vedic period. And the Vedic period very clearly also mentions uh, about the calendar being very lunisolar centric um, calculations. Now, one thing here, let me just pause and bring to your attention that from the Vedic times, our rishis have referred to the earth as Bhugola, meaning earth is spherical in shape. So they did not have Bhuchapta. The earth being flat was never a concept. Second, they also understood that earth is not the center of this uh, planetary movement. It is the sun centric. So therefore it is called Saurya Mandala. And they had a pretty good grip in understanding the speed of light. They had pretty good understanding about the distance between earth and the sun, earth and the moon, and various other planetary objects. You should read the Navagraha Stotram. I'll not again deviate from today's topic. I'll just focus on uh, the calendar system. So these points are very, very mind-boggling as to how did they come to know of these details with such specific detail. Quite an astounding thing. Now going back, uh, there is a constant, they realized that there is a constant correlationship between the solar year and its monthly lunar divisions. One lunar month precisely is about 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, and 3 seconds long. So the 12 months put together is 11 days short, approximately about 11 days short of the solar year. So it turns out to be about 354 days, 8 hours, 48 minutes, and 36 seconds. Now, to help these lunar months coincide with the solar calculations, the practice that was inculcated was by inserting a intercalary or an extra month. So, for every 60 solar months, which equals to 62 lunar months, an extra month had to be added in to break in the correlation and to keep them in sync. This extra month is called Adhika Masa. Once in a few centuries, there has to be a minor adjustment of removing a particular masa, that is called the Nuna Masa. I'll not go into that detail today. let's just focus on that which is consistent repetition over a period of 2.5 years. There is a adhika masa that happens. Now all of this is referred to in the Rig Veda. And the lunar month is divided into 30 lunar days called tithi. Now these tithis are 30. How are they named and how are they divided? Let me take you through that. The tithi are calculated. There's a very scientific uh, understanding here. After this slide, I'll show you as to how beautifully our rishis had calculated this. I mean, when you understand this, you cannot but, you know, be amazed. So the rishis are what I call the scientists of the internal world and the external world. So the how did they understand the calculation of tithi? By using the difference of the longitudinal angle between the position of the sun and the moon, of course, with the earth in reference. Each tithi is defined by the time required for the longitude of the moon to increase by 12 degrees over the longitude of the sun. Vedic astronomers, whether you look into Surya Siddhanta or various other works after that, you will find that they understood that the complication is further increased because this is not a simple calculation of orbit which is circular in motion, but they understood that it was elliptical in motion. So because it is elliptical, the length of a tithi varies. Let me just go into the next slide so that you get to understand. See, when the moon is closer to the sun, you find that it is farther away, and when it is 180 degrees away, when you see the Purnima, even then it is on its elliptical longest stretch away from the earth. So calculating this, the tithi has a variation of about 20 to 27 hours in its calculation. Though according to the solar calendar, the day has begun. That is why we get sometimes when a tithi gets omitted because it passed by during the night times, or certain times we have two consecutive days sharing the same tithi, or within the same day there are two tithis coming in, because it is that calculation of 20 to 27 hours, depending on where the moon is in with reference to there is no arbitrariness here. It is all based on formula, which you can clearly see how that variation comes in. Now, to help this lunar months get in sync with the solar year, as I earlier explained, there was a need for the Adhika Masa. Now, don't consider this as a ridiculousness, because in our Vedic literature and various other literatures, you will find that our rishis have calculated the minutest aspect of time as 34,000th of a second. And see here in the middle, there's a diagram that I have. In this diagram, in the bottom most corner, you will see 10 to the power of minus 7 is called Triti or Trisranu. One day I'll cover this particular chart in its detail. So they calculated from Triti all the way up to the cycle of Brahmaji, complete cycle of Brahmaji, which is 10 to the power of 22. So, because of its precision, because of its accuracy, because of its scientific calculation, formula based calculation, this Hindu calendar became very, very popular. It spread around Nepal, Tibet, the Southeast Asian countries, the Islamic West, the Middle East. Many of the texts were translated into Chinese, and through the Silk Route, there were several exchanges into the Middle East, into the Arabic world, Persia, and further west of Persia into the Arabic world, Turkey and Anatolia and other places. So we find that these works were translated. One great American historian who recently passed away, David Pingree, he noted that definitely there is a positive influence of the Indic Jyotisha Shastra on the Western, which has an influence because of the Greek, Islamic, and the Babylonian systems. The formulas and the particular stamp of this Jyotisha Shastra can be seen in those early works, which is another topic for me to get into, which we will see in a later presentation. So you will find that this calendar system had its reflection take far and wide because of its unique precision and accuracy, the way it was calculated. Imagine 10 to the power of minus 7 all the way up to 10 to the power of 22. That's a mind boggling picture right there. Now, moving forward, each month was divided into two parts: Krishna Paksha, Shukla Paksha. Why is it called Krishna Paksha and Shukla Paksha? The the month which ends with the full moon is called Purnimanta, and the month which ends with the new moon or the no moon is called the Amasanta or Amavasya Anta. Amavasanta. Each month gets divided into two parts or two pakshas. When the moon waxes from the new moon to full moon, it is called Shukla Paksha. Meaning, from dark, it is moving down to the fully illumined night. So, Shukla means glowing, that which is illumined. So, the glowing fortnight. That is called the Shukla Paksha. The moon wanes from the full moon to the new moon. So it is going from the bright illumined night to a darker night. So therefore it is called Krishna Paksha. Each Paksha has 15 tithis. The first day of the Shukla Paksha starts with Amavasya and ends into Purnima on the 15th tithi. The first day of Krishna Paksha, which ends in new moon, the 15th tithi. So this system, when you add 15 plus 15, 13 days makes it truly a simple, logical, precise calculation of a month. Now, after having calculated the month, now we move into understanding the seasons within this Hindu almanac. The 12 lunar months of a solar year are divided into 6 ritus, each comprising of approximately 2 months. Since the seasons are solar based, each of these 6 seasons, Sharad Rutu, which is the late monsoon, Hemanta Rutu, early winter, Shishira, winter season, Vasanta, spring, Grishma, Grishma is summer season, Varsha Rutu is monsoon season. The commencement of these dates are approximately around the 21st of the Georgian calendar, plus or minus 1 or 2 days, depending on the movement of the lunar based calendar. Now, the importance of this summer solstice and the winter solstice in a solar year are used to determine the 6 seasons. So that brings in a very beautiful concept called Dakshinayana and Uttarayana. Dakshinayana is the sun's southern course of movement. The sun doesn't move, but it is our movement, the earth's movement from June 21st to the December 21st. That is called the Dakshinayana. Uttarayana is sun's northern course of progress, which starts from December 21st all the way to June 21st. Now let me give you a closer view of this particular chart that I have here. Now if you pay attention, in the early spring there is Chaitra Masa, and that is when the Hindu calendar of New Year begins. And from there it moves, and you have several festivities that begin forth from that day onwards with the movement. So I just give you the a closer view of this particular chart so that we can understand it better. Now, as this particular lunisolar movement impacts the earth, the tithi at the sunrise is what we take into calculation as what tithi is decided for the day. We don't have a week system, meaning a group of 7 days put together. Grouping it as one group became a habit, became a practice, as a weekly practice, borrowed from the Western. We go predominantly by the calculation of Vara, Somavara, Mangalavara, Budhavara, Guruvara, Shukra, Shani, and Adivara. Now, these 7 days give you the solar context as to which day of the week we belong to. Then the Tithi tells where exactly are we geopositionally stationed. I mean, the cell phones have it in the last few years. Maybe the satellites kept using it for maybe couple of decades. This we are talking about the geopositioning system way back thousands of years, tens and thousands of years. So the precision of it, that today when they sit down in NASA or the Greenwich observatories, they give us the sunrise, the sunset based on the equipment. Without any such equipment, based purely on derivatives and calculations of formulas, the Vaidika Samskriti went into such colossal discovery of time and timekeeping. So, if you pay attention to these few aspects, what tithi, what Vara, what nakshatra? If you can keep an eye on these three, it gives us a gist about our own geopositioning system of the entire time lapse that is happening. And now, to such a culture to come and say, you're primitive, you don't have a clue about your history, you don't have a clue about your historic references are jumbled up. You, when you entered in, I'm talking about the Western researchers, when you stepped in to put a timeline to the Vedic literature, to the Puranic literature, to the several references that have been given with such precision, probably they must have been uh, jumbled up, and they had a task to put it between that time frame, just around the time frame after the Georgian calendar, where the year of the Lord began. And you refer now Wikipedia, everything is jumbled up. Adi Shankaracharya ji has a range of about 7 to 800 years, depending on which website you want to see. You refer to Ramayana, there is a huge debate or huge confusion. Everything is jumbled up. But once you connect with the system of calculation and start dating it back, you will have the tools. Once you have the tools, the validity of our own past, our own ancient culture, and the need to be connected to it so that I can practice it today and I can hand that culture, that tradition, that custom to my next generation, that connection of the ancient past of an unbroken civilization. All other civilizations have come to an end. The Roman, the Greek, they broke. But the unbroken civilization, in spite of consistent attacks of barbaric invaders, both in the form of the Islamic and the Christian, for almost about a millennium plus, and still it stands robust on its 2 feet. And that is because this beauty of uh, connection and precision cannot be ignored, and that keeps it unshakable. So please take time and try understanding this. Hari Om.